The following program, Normal Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting NORML.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of Normal Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents Normal Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, Normal's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Wednesday, January 5th, 2011, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for the next 60 minutes of news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community. Podcast as the Normal Daily Audio Stash on iTunes and on demand at stash.normal.org. Followed by another 60 minutes of live toker talk radio right here at Normal Show Live with myself and our co-host right here in the studio, my good friend, Ganja John.
I barely made it into the studio today.
It was a beautiful thing. Like a minute and a half before we had to go on, and well, at least you didn't run in your red underwear.
Yeah, that's true.
It'd probably be green, judging by what you're wearing today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just running it live here at Normal Show Live. Glad to have you here. And also, we've got Cannabis Carrie that we're going to have to dial up. We're just getting her dialed up on the Skype right now, so we'll have her for our hemp headlines, which will be right after our first break. Also on today's show, since it's Wednesday, it's time for our Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. We'll be taking your live calls at 971-533-7111 or your live chat questions for Dr. Mitch. Anything you want to know about cannabis science, history, culture, the studies about cannabis, we've got the answers for you here with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. All right, let's go to the phones where we've got Cannabis Carrie waiting on Skype. Carrie, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Russ. Hi, Ganja John.
I'm just calling to find out.
I made it just barely, too.
we're all last second here. We're adjusting our clocks, getting used to 2011, but we've got a Normal Show Live for you. Carrie's got our hemp headlines, so what's in the news today, Carrie?
I do. There's lots of news today. We've got some more fallout from those San Luis Obispo raids that happened over the Christmas break between Christmas and New Year's. Also, one of our favorite activists was busted with some paraphernalia. We're going to talk about that. And I want you to mark an event on your calendars for next summer, and I'm going to tell you how one of the biggest events is getting a new home.
All right, we'll take a look at that coming up here right after our first break. Also, at the end of today's show in the first hour, we're going to go on a little radical rant. We're going to talk about the price of weed. I'm representing the price of weed is too damn high party today, and we'll talk about that and how we can get that price lowered. Also, in our second hour, we're going to discuss all sorts of other things in the news. A Michigan case where the DEA is trying to get at patient records, the confirmation of the DEA head, Michelle Leonhardt, and a look at some of the statistics involved in marijuana smoking in full-time workers. It's Normal Show Live. We're back right after this.
You're listening to Normal Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation. Been busted? Need a lawyer? Call the Normal Legal Committee for an attorney near you. Find one at NORML.org. Remember, attorneys are cheaper than a lifelong criminal drug record.
It's that freedom. I'm free to live.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Our marijuana laws are terribly unfair, and they make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges, and we are unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They are average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. And it's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
The raids on mobile medical marijuana delivery services that happened on December 27th in San Luis Obispo, California, has attracted the attention of activists and attorneys clamoring to defend the 15 defendants who were arrested. The treatment of the defendants during the raid have been called appalling as officers from various law enforcement agencies arrested them at their homes. Those arrested were charged with selling or furnishing marijuana or hash, and some were charged with child endangerment, and Child Protective Services removed at least 6 children from the homes of 3 different families. A report on the raid say that police kept people handcuffed and face down on the ground for hours, including a grandmother of some of the children later taken by Child Protective Services. One of the attorneys for some of those arrested say that their clients were operating nonprofit dispensaries and conducting themselves in compliance with California law. During the raids, the aggressive actions of the narcotics task force led to one man who was arrested to have a heart attack. He was taken to a local emergency room before being booked. Cash and medical marijuana were seized in the raids, and the police have frozen bank accounts of the defendants. Coordinated police raids on medical marijuana delivery services also occurred earlier last year in the San Jose area based on an interpretation of state law similarly held by local San Luis Obispo law enforcement agencies, namely that everyone in a collective must physically participate in the cultivation of plants and no money can exchange hands. During the raids, guns were reportedly held to the heads of children as they were dragged from their beds. Family pets were kicked. Stephen Gordon, one of the defendants, said that the raiding officers busted down his door and cuffed him with a gun to his head before he had a chance to show them his paperwork and documentation. When he asked what he had done wrong, they told him that he sold marijuana to an undercover police officer. At least 6 agencies and 50 agents participated in the investigation and arrest of 15 people. 2 of the defendants whose homes were raided only service 5 clients. Other sources say that some arrestees were left in the task force van for more than 3 hours while officers made other arrests, and those inside were not allowed to use the restroom, and one defendant ended up urinating in the van. Stephen Gordon, who was also arrested, said that the officers were laughing at the man in obvious distress. Gordon, a single father of a 10-year-old, said he keeps his medical marijuana in a safe in his garage and was appalled that they took his 10-year-old daughter and drug tested her. He says that his daughter is a straight-A student and is confused and distressed over their family's treatment. Following the arrest, a press release from the task force said that agents seized approximately 4 grams of cocaine, 57 pounds of marijuana, 162 marijuana plants, 146 grams of hash, 718 grams of hash oil, 7 firearms, and $492,000 in cash. What the task force failed to mention was that 7 firearms seized were discovered in a locked gun safe at the Paso Robles home of Peter Miller, an avid hunter. And in addition, the cocaine was seized from only 1 resident. The first set of arraignments is scheduled for January 11th at 8 a.m. at the San Luis Obispo County Courthouse, and medical marijuana advocates plan to be there to protest. They will meet in front of the San Luis Obispo County Courthouse at 7:30 a.m. and urge anyone in the area to attend to show your support. Again, that protest will be held next Tuesday morning, and we will certainly bring you updates here on The Stash.
how barbaric this is. And it's not just that we're talking about medical marijuana patients, that we're talking about people that use marijuana, period, whether this is medical or not. I can't imagine anyone would listen to this story about kids being dragged out and pets being kicked and people needing to urinate being made fun of and forced to be in their own filth and being charged with child endangerment and all these terrible charges. I can't imagine anyone hearing this story and hearing, oh, they weren't medical? Oh, well, then it's perfectly justified. Right? Because I know that, Carrie mentions, medical marijuana activists are going to come out to protest. No, all marijuana activists need to come out and protest this. It doesn't matter whether this is medical use or not. This is no way to be treating human beings. But it once again illustrates the point that even in California, a state that has had medical marijuana for 15 years now, coming up on this November in 2011, 15 years of medical marijuana in the state of California, the most liberal state when it comes to medical marijuana, we still have stories like this where jackbooted thugs are coming in and abusing people's families, abusing people's pets, seizing their assets, and making their lives a living hell. Medical marijuana does not go far enough. And for all those people who are going to protest this as medical marijuana activists saying, gee, how could you do this to patients? The reason they do this to patients is because they feel justified in doing it to people who are not patients, because they have to justify that we can go after these people that are supposedly abusing the medical marijuana law and who are just criminals like the rest of us. There is no distinction between medical and recreational use in the eyes of police officers. Some of these vicious cops here involved in these raids, they look down on us. They think of us as lesser than. They think of us, they demonize us. They treat us like animals, and they treat our animals even worse. It's time to legalize for everyone, so no patient and no human ever has to suffer this kind of force and this kind of trauma ever again.
Former talk show host and national activist on many subjects, Montel Williams, was the latest victim of the TSA on Tuesday. While traveling through Wisconsin, Williams was found to have a marijuana pipe on his carry-on luggage. The small metal pipe set off a metal detector. The pipe must have been a brand new purchase, as there was no marijuana residue present. Now, Montel Williams has spoken publicly about his support for medical marijuana, and he does suffer from multiple sclerosis. He says that he uses marijuana to treat the pain associated with his disease. The Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office gave Williams a citation for possession of drug paraphernalia, and Williams was released after paying the $484 fine for his offense, and he was allowed to continue his travel. The 54-year-old was diagnosed with MS back in 1999. This isn't the first time that Montel has ran into trouble in an airport. Montel says that he became a medical marijuana activist after he was caught with marijuana paraphernalia in a Detroit airport back in November of 2003. He was briefly detained at the Detroit Metro Airport in that bus, where baggage screeners found a glass pipe and marijuana residue in one of his bags. He was cited for less than a 20th of a gram of keef residue. Airport security called the police in that raid, and he was fined only $100 then. He says that was the day he was outed as a marijuana user. He went on to devote several chapters of his autobiography, Climbing Higher, to make a case for medical marijuana. He also used his previous daytime talk show to highlight medical marijuana and make a passionate plea on the national circuit for cannabis use over harder drugs like Percocet and Vicodin that are highly addictive.
Wow, busting Montel Williams. Now, Carrie, did I catch this right? This was an unused metal pipe they caught him with?
That's right. They found no residue. I thought it was interesting that the last time he was busted 7 years ago, he was only fined $100, and he had a glass pipe that did have residue, plus some keef residue in a jar that he was carrying in his luggage. This time, brand new metal pipe, no residue whatsoever, still got a $484 fine.
Which state was the residue bust in? Does it say?
It was in Detroit.
Okay, so Michigan versus, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right? So maybe It's a state situation with regard to the paraphernalia. And this goes to show, folks, that, paraphernalia charges in many, many states can be brought against you, even if the paraphernalia is unused. I know folks, they come out to Colorado or California or Oregon for some of these events, and they get all sorts of trinkets they buy at the Hemp Fest or at the shop or whatever, and then they want to fly back with it. Well, a lot of times they're thinking, well, as long as it's clean, it's not paraphernalia. That's not the case. case, you can still be charged with paraphernalia in many states if an item is, obviously used for drug-using purposes, which I suppose is what's going on here in Milwaukee. $484 fine. It's nice that Montel Williams has the means to be able to pay that kind of fine. For everyone else, it would be the most expensive metal pipe they ever purchased. And also, it makes me wonder about, Montel's thinking about, traveling here. A metal pipe is obviously going to be detected in a metal detector, you would think. And when you're Montel Williams, do you really need to be carrying a pipe around with you when you're not carrying around any medicine with you? It didn't sound like he was getting any of the medicine carried with him. They didn't catch him with any of that. And wherever he was going to end up, I'm sure it would have been possible to acquire a pipe. I don't understand why he necessarily took that risk. But again, being as a high profile a celebrity as Montel Williams, involved in the medical marijuana movement, maybe we can get some good press out of this from people realizing how stupid it is to bust a talk show host for an unused metal pipe.
And the world's largest cannabis lifestyle annual event might move venue this year, according to an email from Seattle HempFest founder Vivian McPeak. For the last 15 years, the giant festival has been held on Seattle's waterfront park, but this year the city of Seattle is doing some heavy construction in Myrtle Edwards Park, so the event's promoters are currently in negotiation for a 20th anniversary venue upgraded to the Seattle Center. The Seattle Center is the home of the famed Space Needle that was constructed for the 1962 World's Fair that was held there and has defined that city's skyline ever since. The Seattle HempFest membership committee feels that a move to the renowned Seattle Center would be a major step up for the visibility and legitimacy for the annual event that attracts as many as 300,000 visitors during the two-day celebration. With the 20th anniversary of the HempFest coming this year, promoters are pushing hard to secure the venue that holds a heavy price tag for the actual center rental and the professional staff that would come with it. Since the event is a free speech event, they cannot afford the commercial rates, so they are looking to sponsors and members to help HempFest move to this all-new venue. Mark your brand new calendars that you got for Christmas that August 6th and 7th will be this very special event in Seattle, Washington. Now, if you would like to help the effort, become a member, snag some vendor space, become a volunteer, or just donate a little cash to the cause, you can visit hempfest.org for more information.
Wow. So two things, folks. A different place. It won't be at Myrtle Edwards. It'll possibly be at Seattle Center, and a different time. It's usually the third weekend of August. This sounds like it's the first weekend of August. So make sure that you got that change ready. 20th anniversary Seattle Hemp Fest. We'll be there with NORML.
And Russ,
yeah.
I was going to tell you that date is dependent on them getting the Seattle Center. That's when it's available. So if they move venues, it might not be on that date, but they're really pushing to get it to the Seattle Center. Everybody on board thinks it's a great move, and we hope they can pull it off.
Yeah, Seattle Center would be a great place for it. Looking forward to it. And again, NORML Show Live will be there with live coverage of Seattle Hemp Fest this year and at many other events throughout the summer. I got another story I'm going to add here to the end of the news. This is being reported on NORML.org's front page as well. Cincinnati repeals a city marijuana possession ordinance. Now, Ohio already has decriminalization throughout the state. Any amount up to 100 grams, and that's about 3.5 ounces. Any amount up to 100 grams is just a minor misdemeanor, which in Ohio means no criminal record, and it's about a $150 fine. And then with all drug convictions, they can suspend your driver's license. But in the city of Cincinnati, they had their own municipal code, which was section 910-23, that says no person shall knowingly obtain, possess, or use marijuana in an amount less than 200 grams. Whoever violates this section is guilty of a 4th degree misdemeanor. If it's their second strike, it's a 1st degree misdemeanor. Now, those meant in the city of Cincinnati, anyone caught with 1 to 100 grams was treated the same as someone caught with more than 100 grams. The 4th degree misdemeanor is a criminal record and a $250 fine. And the 1st degree misdemeanor for the second strike is a $1,000 fine and up to 6 months in jail. Well, that has just been repealed, and it's expected to be finalized in tomorrow's city council meeting in a 5-4 vote. They are repealing ordinance 910-23, and the folks out there at Prioritize Cincinnati, it's a great website, they really educated the people as to how stupid this city ordinance was that made marijuana possession more of a crime than it was in the rest of the state of Ohio. It was supposed supposed to reduce the number of handguns on the streets, but handgun seizures went down 25%. It was supposed to reduce handgun crimes, but handgun crimes went up 56%. And as Cincinnati is struggling with a budget deficit, the marijuana possession costs, the enforcement of it, was costing the city $181,000. Because of this big budget crunch, the city council was debating a new budget, and part of that new budget was to repeal this marijuana possession enforcement law so they could save that money on the enforcement. And it does, again, look like it's going to pass tomorrow by a 5-4 partisan vote in the Cincinnati City Council, so that marijuana will once again be decriminalized all throughout the city of Cincinnati.
I think it's time for a break.
It's absolutely time for a break. We got a little hash plant. Gonna hang loose, have a little bit of that. Listen to some Grateful Dread right after the break, 20 after for Irie Wednesday.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would say to South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
In today's busy world, we're inundated by advertising for all types of pharmaceuticals that come with a laundry list of potential side effects. Shouldn't you have better medical choices? Natural alternatives to pills pushed by Big Pharma? At Alternative Medical Choices, you could choose natural, safe, and effective alternative therapies that are right for your budget without nasty side effects. Cannabis, or marijuana, has been a legal medicine in the Pacific Northwest since 1998. Our doctors will help determine your qualifications for a medical marijuana recommendation in Oregon, no matter where you live. Our massage therapists will ease your aches and stress with soothing hemp seed oil or cannabis-infused massage salves. We also offer acupuncture, Reiki, and other alternative health therapies. Call Alternative Medical Choices in Portland, Oregon at 503-288-5579 or visit our website at www.altmedchoices.com. We specialize in out-of-state recommendations. That's www.altmedchoices.com or call 503-288-5579.
It's time for your Daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420-friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Our PodSafe music is donated by freedom-loving musicians who support our goal of ending adult marijuana prohibition. Today we get tunes for Irie Wednesday, our celebration of that mellow vibe we find in the best of reggae, ska, calypso, and Latin music. Brought to you by Grateful Dread Public Radio, Summit, New Jersey's progressive peace station at gdreadradio.net. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now, here's some great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
Greetings, everyone, and Happy New Year. Grateful Dread with you from the studios of Grateful Dread Public Radio in Summit, New Jersey. Today, we are starting a new year with an old song. Marlon Asher is the thinking person's reggae star. He hails from Trinidad and has enjoyed numerous hit songs since the one-time church singer's career took off in 2006. He's had great hits, among them Fit and Strong and the classic Ganja Farmer. Asher last was heard on NORML Show Live nearly 2 years ago, but he's worth revisiting. The music is seriously Irie, and he approaches marijuana music from a different perspective. Now, his own positions on ganja use are not well known, but he did tell his hometown paper, the Trinidad and Tobago Express, that while he does not endorse marijuana use and cultivation, neither does he decry it. He believes it is wrong for the government to wreck the livelihoods of those who grow it. Herb is not for everyone, he says, saying the goal of his ode to the ganja farmer is to show the anger that a farmer has inside when he sees his cannabis field, his life's work, being burnt by the government. That anger and frustration is real, he says. Amen, it is, and it needs to stop. So, we revisit Ganja Planter, a reworking of the original Ganja Farmer, in honor of Asher and the non-stoners who stand for legalization and decriminalization. You can find Marlon Asher's music on iTunes, and you can hear it right now on NORML Show Live. Marlon Asher and Ganja Planter.
Ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth, when me put the ganja. Babylon come and light it at a fire, me a chant. Yes, I'm a ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth, when me put the ganja. Babylon come, big stinking helicopter flow through the air. With them call it weed eater. Them never did it when me was out in water, or when me did implying fertilizer. Yet out of the sky them spitting fire, and I'm a little youth man with a hot temper. Me dig up me stinking rocket launcher, and in the air this was the helicopter me a chant. Some ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth when me put the ganja. Babylon come a lot it at a fire me a chant. Yes, I'm a ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth when me put the ganja. Babylon come, yeah, tuna man. True Jaja bless I with no for good vibes man. And true me have the hardest set of ganja in the land. Make doctors get no meditation, and so them coulda give it to them sick patient. Make chemists get no meditation, and so them coulda brew new medication. Make singers get some inspiration, and so them coulda spread your message from the land me a chant. Yes, I'm a ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth when me put the ganja. Babylon come and light it at a fire me a chant. Yes, I'm a ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth when me put the ganja. Babylon come, watch out. Come and say ganja, 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 ganja. If you don't want to call it that, call it sensaminia. If you don't want to call it that, call it marijuana. If you don't want to call it that, call it the indica. And from me bonnet in a chalice and a sheet of paper. Lord, say me love me ganja. Some ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth when me put the ganja. Babylon come and light it at a fire me a chant. Yes, I'm a ganja planter, call me the ganja farmer. Deep down in the earth when me put the ganja. Babylon come. Well, it's like 10,000 Babylon in one blue van. Welcome Chester and this Molly, damn ganja land. 10,000 Babylon in one blue van. Welcome Chester and this, ganja planter, call me the farmer. Deep down in the earth with me money ganja. Well, I me ganja, ganja, me ganja, ganja, loud ganja, 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 ganja.
You want a copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media, and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
NORML Show Live reminds you to never consent to a search. If you're holding and you consent, in most states you will be arrested immediately and you will go to jail. If you don't consent to a search, police may try to intimidate you by threatening to bring in drug-sniffing dogs or try to fool you by saying things will go easier if you consent. Yeah, easier for them, sure. Stand your ground, refuse the search, and ask the officer if you're free to go.
If they still detain you and eventually find your contraband, you'll be no more busted than if you had allowed the search. But by refusing the search, your attorney has a chance to win your acquittal before a judge. If you consent to the search, your attorney's hands are tied. You can find a list of NORML Legal Committee attorneys specializing in marijuana cases by visiting the Find a Lawyer link at NORML.org.
It's time for NORML Show Live's Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York in Albany and the author of Understanding Marijuana. Now here's your dose of cannabis science.
All right, everybody, welcome to our first Cannabis Science segment of 2011. We're happy to start the new year with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. How you doing, sir?
Having a great day. How about you?
Oh, good, good. Are you buried out there in the Northeast under snow still?
Not even enough snow to really ski, so nothing to worry about.
Oh, good, good. Glad to hear it. Hey, before we get started here, we're going to be taking calls from our audience at 971-533-7111. We're also going to be taking questions via chat, and if you've got a chat question, preface it with the word question in all caps, and our own Cannabis Carry will get it and pipe it over to me via Skype. But before we get to the questions, I always like to give Dr. Earlywine a chance to review any of the latest studies or news items that might have piqued his interest and to inform our audience about it. So what's up, Dr. Mitch?
It turns out on the ONDCP listserv, the Office of National Drug Control Policy, there's still some confusion about the K2 and spice law. The federal ban for at least a 12-month stint is going to be basically enforced this year, but it's got to be done through local law enforcement. A bunch of people are saying, oh, I'm trying to stock up and stuff like that. I really do not recommend it. These JWH compounds are just not something we know anything about, and just would prefer something with, say, a 5,000-year history of safety.
Yeah, no kidding. And recently I saw a story, I think it was this morning, I forget if it was local or where it came from, but some story of a man who had run his car over a bunch of people and was blaming the K2. He had just smoked some K2 and that caused him to run over all these people. So we're getting more and more of this hysteria over these spice, K2, these synthetic cannabinoids. Again, the only reason these things exist, the only reason people are going for these things is because of the drug testing and the illegality of the natural, safe cannabis. So once again, one of those effects of prohibition that we so hate. All right, let's go to the phone lines here, or let's go to, the chat line here. We've got some questions already coming in, and the first one comes from David, who wants to know, is there any progress on getting the Stoners Against 19 people on board with legalization? And I guess maybe broader, we could just talk about the culture of this underground marijuana movement that we have that kind of resists legalization, and what are the historical aspects of that?
I've spoken to a number of folks, particularly in Northern California, who were, shall we say, apprehensive about legalization given some of their boutique approaches to the cannabis they work so hard to produce. I think some guarantees that might be helpful built into a revised Prop 19 have been discussed. It's unclear how to exactly handle all that regulation and the big issue of having a legal cannabis market, but I really trust those guys who were in charge of Prop 19 in the first place. I'm optimistic about this, and the clincher is sort of guaranteeing these folks that they'll have their opportunity to stay in business, much the way, say, a microbrew does well or something like that. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and we're going to explore some options as the year progresses.
Oh, great. And looking back historically, let's look back to American alcohol prohibition. While it only lasted for 13 years, and there was a lot of differences between it and the current marijuana prohibition, was there politically any such thing as, bootleggers against repeal or anything like that?
In fact, it was pretty legendary how much bootleggers would support political candidates who were really behind prohibition, because it really did, in some ways, make their livelihood. And I have to confess, my grandmother ran a speakeasy at that time and probably would have voted against repeal too. But the clincher is there's room for everybody in this market. This is not a small market at all, and I think that there's a way to make this work without it going crazy. A number of my friends who are medical users have pointed out that there's been kind of a homogenization of tobacco over the years, that there used to be markedly more strains of tobacco, and then gradually as big industries took over, suddenly there aren't as many. But I think, again, we've got a very different set of needs now, and people are understanding that variety is the spice of life, so to speak. And we want to make sure that any strain that has any utility remains in sort of our cannabis repertoire.
And why should I not be surprised that there's a speakeasy in the early wine history? That seems to make sense.
Exactly.
All right, we have another question from the chat room here. Person who's going to be getting hip surgery in Nashville, Tennessee, and wants to know if he should be worried about a drug test when he has that hip surgery.
It looks like it's going to depend on where you're having that surgery done. So we've talked about how the VA had a bad policy about prescribing opiates for pain and not letting folks who had tested positive for cannabinoids get to those. That doesn't seem to be the case at the VA federally any longer. Some other hospitals have been shown a lot of individual differences on this, so I'm afraid it's going to vary from place to place. But I'm seeing pretty compelling things, even with two people who've emailed me about hip surgery, saying they can keep their opiate use down with the use of cannabis. So I feel like this is a misplaced prohibition, if you will, and I hope that they can work things out so that that'll be the case. They can use their cannabis to keep that pain to a minimum.
Good. All right. We've got a call coming in on our line here from the 609 area code. 609, what's your question for Dr. Mitch Earlywine?
I've had several spine surgeries, a fusion, and I was wondering if there was any type of strain that he could recommend versus other strains.
As it turns out, the impact of pain seems to be both dosage-related and strain-related. So depending on what strains you have accessible to, you may have to experiment. And it's often one of those Goldilocks situations where too much and too little isn't quite right, but right down the middle will do the trick. I'm getting diverse reports from folks who tell me the indicas, particularly at night, seem to do well for both the sleep and the pain, particularly with spinal stuff.
Okay, yeah, look for an indica-dominant strain if you can find such a thing. Thanks for your call. We're speaking with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, professor of psychology at SUNY Albany and the author of many books about marijuana, including The Parent's Guide to Marijuana and Understanding Marijuana, plus Pot and Politics. And Dr. Mitch, before we go much further, wanted to ask you about progress on your upcoming book on humor.
The Humor 101 book has been released. It's on Amazon.com. I'm trying to get copies out to you and Ganja John and Carrie right now. And it's basically a review of various models of why things are funny and how adding humor to your life can help your mental health, physical health, and just general well-being. And I appreciate you asking. I think folks would really get a kick out of it, but there isn't a whole lot of cannabis news in there.
Oh, that's okay. You know, cannabis and humor kind of go together.
Yeah, you can expect my full review on the show.
The full review from Ganja John. All right, the phone line here is 971-533-7111, and we've got a question from Green Girl 3 who wants to know, are there sesquiterpenes in cannabis? And what the heck's a sesquiterpene?
There's a whole set of basically flavonoids, these molecules that have aromatic or even gustatory properties based on the way those molecules are shaped. And the sesquiterpenes is really an obscure subset of those. There do seem to be at least a couple of identifiable ones in the cannabis plant, but they don't seem to be psychoactive. They may contribute to flavor and aroma.
Okay. We have an anonymous question here from the chat who wants to know, it says, when taking a drug test, I heard that if you list that you take lots of ibuprofen, it might make the test results test false positive. Have you heard anything about drug testing, listing ibuprofen and false positives?
As it turns out, ibuprofen may create a false positive for some pharmaceuticals, but it won't necessarily create a false positive for cannabis. So the metabolites aren't in that cannabinoid group, if you will, and if they were concerned about some other drugs, perhaps you might get some help from that, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be a way to get around testing positive for THC.
Okay. We have a question from Randy who states that his 83-year-old grandmother has nerve pain from post-shingles. She's on Lyrica. With her age and a non-smoker, what do you think of her instead using cannabis for her pain rather than the Lyrica?
As it turns out, Lyrica is not a pain drug with a ton of negative consequences, particularly at reasonable doses. If she were willing to vaporize, I think she could tell you, is this helping her or not. We're finding a subset of older folks really get disoriented and just don't like cannabinoid-based meds, which is why I would encourage small vaporization rather than an edible, just because it's really hard to control the dosage sometimes on the edibles. And I get the occasional email of folks who basically ended up eating a little too much and went a little further along in the treatment, shall we say, than they meant to.
Okay. Triceratops has a question. What effect, if any, does cannabis have on cannabis smoking have on exercise, specifically weightlifting and running?
There's an intriguing impact of cannabis on the bronchial passages, but I really don't recommend it as some kind of exercise aid. I've also heard folks say, well, I'm more immune to pain and I can lift more and exercise harder, but unfortunately you may be actually doing damage and not really realize it. So I'm not a big fan of cannabis as a workout aid. However, I do recommend it as a reward for working out nice and hard. So by all means, use it accordingly.
Okay. Question coming in on the phone line here from the 801 area code. What's your question for Dr. Mitch?
Hi, Russ. Hi, Mitch. Hey, speaking of grandmas, my grandma tried to eat a brownie to help her pain. And it was a pretty strong brownie, but it was a small dose. And she ended up puking violently. And I don't know if maybe it's an allergic reaction, but is there a certain dosage of THC or of cannabis that can make somebody throw up like that?
As it turns out, it depends upon what other meds she may be on. So there's at least one subset of folks who, if they're on basically the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, they also seem to get nauseated in response to cannabinoids, and that may be the case for her. And particularly with older folks, low dosages go a long, long way. They don't often have a lot of lean body mass for that to spread around in, and so what seems like a completely reasonable dose to an experienced user would send them to Planet Claire.
Okay. Be careful with the dosage and check for other medications they might be using. Another call coming in here. We'll add on the 734 area code to our call. If it will respond here. Going slowly. There we go. 734 area code. What's your question for Dr. Mitch?
Yes, hello. I was just wondering how things were going out in California. I'm calling from Michigan. I'm a medically marijuana participant, and I'm just interested to finding out if they're ever going to be able to get things a little bit better organized than they are. The price of the marijuana up here that we can get is very, very expensive, and it's unfortunate because, it definitely does the person good to have it if they need it, and it's unfortunate most people that need it are disabled or they're handicapped. And those people are under Social Security or what have you. And I was just curious if there was any progress going to be made in that area.
As it turns out, from the emails I'm getting on a listserv of folks who are tracking this, they really are battling, but I know it's got to feel slow as molasses. So the regulatory bodies there have essentially been resisting some of the efforts to expand the different diagnoses where this would apply, and the accessibility seems to be incredibly limited. So the dispensary model, if you will, doesn't seem to be catching on the way a lot of folks who had initiated that law had originally hoped.
Yeah, it's going to be tough here getting the prices down, and thanks for your call. Getting the prices down until we move to a market of full legalization. situation just because there's so much profit involved outside in the black market that you have 90% of cannabis users who aren't medical users, and you can't have two separate markets. As the Supreme Court once said, marijuana is fungible. All right, we have another call coming in here for Dr. Mitch Earlywine from the 270 area code. What's your question for Dr. Mitch?
Hi, Dr. Mitch. This is Brent from Kentucky. I just had several teeth pulled on my upper jaw, and the oral surgeon's telling me that I might have a neuropathy up in there, and I'm not sure what kind of treatment options I'm going to be going through for that. I've never heard of anything like that. Do you know anything about neuropathy?
So when it comes to tooth extraction, there actually are cannabis-related data on this, and it turns out, again, that intermediate dose is the way to go, and it seems to do as well or better than, say, the codeine-based drugs, which are often prescribed for that very condition. I would suggest that you'd have to experiment some, and unfortunately too much will actually make the pain worse, and you'll get a feel for what's an appropriate dose under those circumstances. And don't be afraid to use the opiates in small doses as well, as you can essentially keep tolerance down to each drug by alternating between the two.
All right, and we got time for another call here that we'll take on the line with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. This is from the 269 area code. 269, what's your question for Dr. Mitch Earlywine?
Hi, I'm a medical marijuana patient in Michigan, and I'm on probation recently, and they say that I cannot use marijuana anymore. So I was wondering if you could explain that further to me.
It makes no sense to me, but it is unfortunately the conditions of probation, at least as the current state laws are enforced. It's really apprehensive, and I feel like trying to make an appeal would be, time well spent, but I'm just not optimistic. If you have your original physician's recommendation, presenting that to both your probation officer and that person's supervisor is at least a step in the right direction, but unfortunately this has not been something that was built into the law when medical cannabis was made available in that state.
So sorry to hear about that, and good luck to you with your probation. And Dr. Mitch, on that subject of denying people their medical marijuana when they're under probation or parole, is there any cases where, have you ever heard of a situation where someone's been denied opioid-based painkillers, Vicodins, Percocets, anything like that, as a condition of parole or probation?
In fact, not, and that's part of what's got me so flummoxed about this. In fact, even hardcore opiates like that don't seem to run into the same problems, at least anywhere near as often as these cannabis stories I've been hearing.
Yeah, it's just terrible. All right, two quick ones from the chat room, and then we're going to have to wrap it up, folks. If you didn't get your question in on time here, you can join us next Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, or send them directly through email to 420research@gmail.com. That's 420research@gmail.com, and they oftentimes become subjects for our future segments here in Cannabis Science every Wednesday here at NORML Show Live. Question here. An anonymous question asking, says, my wife doesn't like the smell of marijuana smoke. Is there any way I can hide it from her? I don't see myself making edibles. I never cook, and that would be suspicious enough. Sounds like me, actually. Any good ways of hiding the smell of marijuana?
As it turns out, the reports I get from vaporizer users are pretty consistent in that the smell doesn't drop to zero, but it definitely drops pretty dramatically. And then I hate to sound like a high school boy, but the hit towel and blowing smoke out the window seems to be the most reliable ways of keeping scents to a minimum. And then any of these masking sprays, particularly folks have told me that the orange scented things seem to cover well. But, again, nothing is perfect, but I'd say vaporizing and a big can of Lysol may be your best bet.
Yeah, with the orange spray, you got to convince your wife that you suddenly enjoy eating oranges. And how come there's no orange peels anywhere? Hey, John, what was the name of that product? Was it Smoke Buddy that we saw at one of the gigs where it was a little handheld?
Dragon's Breath. It was basically
Dragon's Breath. That's it.
It was basically a tampon dispenser with some activated charcoal.
Yeah, with a filter kind of situation, so that when you breathe the smoke through it, it would capture the smell there. So the entrepreneurs are working at it. Check out a Hemp Fest.
I used it in my hotel room, and it worked pretty good. So you guys can look for it out there. They gave us a bunch of free stuff, so we might as well plug them. But that was Dragon's Breath. You can Google it.
There you go. And let's see, one last thing here. We've got a person asking, what is, we mentioned this earlier about flavonoids and terpenes. What is the part of the cannabis plant that leads to that aroma, that smell of cannabis?
What's intriguing is they're basically flavonoids in both the leaf and in the bud. So it's not necessarily a great predictor of potency or any direct link to any psychoactive effect. But they do seem to be most prevalent in leaves and buds.
Okay. More questions on cannabis science. We'll have to wait until next week. We got a lot of good calls and a lot of good chat questions. Again, if you didn't get them in quick enough, you can always email to 420research@gmail.com. Dr. Mitch Earlywine is a member of the NORML Advisory Board and a professor of psychology at SUNY Albany. Joins us every Wednesday here in Cannabis Science. Thanks so much, Dr. Mitch, for all you do for us.
Have a great week.
All right. When we come back, we'll do a little radical ranting on the price of weed. Stick around.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org.
Are you or is someone you know a marijuana smoker? Have you or is someone in your family been arrested for a marijuana violation? You need to know the truth about pot. NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is the most comprehensive source of information regarding marijuana and its effects on health, as well as legal issues. NORML even offers a database of lawyers specializing in cannabis in your area. NORML, the nation's largest and most successful marijuana law reform organization, has spent decades gathering the knowledge and science on everything related to cannabis. NORML is the best resource to find out the truth about marijuana, connect with a lawyer in your area, or help find an end to prohibition. Information is available at NORML.org. That's NORML.org. Or toll free at 888-67-NORML.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, and I'm here representing the price of weed is too damn high party. You know, we take a look at all sorts of websites having to do with the price of weed, and lately there's priceofweed.com, which helps to estimate what the prices are based on people's submissions into the website, anonymous submissions on low-grade, mid-grade, and high-grade marijuana, how much it costs per ounce when those people recently bought it. Since it's anonymous, there's no reason to believe that people are making this stuff up. I'm willing to believe this is what the average costs are. Here in the Pacific Northwest, the average cost cost of an ounce of high-grade marijuana is about $280. But as we move across the United States, we see ranges into the 300s, 400s, 500s, even some places where it's $700 or $800 for an ounce of high-grade marijuana. When we look at the low-grade marijuana, the prices can be a third to a fourth of that, but then we're talking about the swaggy Mexican brickweed that nobody really wants to smoke. So why is the price of weed so damn high? For the longest time as a cannabis consumer, I was always told the price of weed was so damn high because of the man. The man's coming after us. We've got to deal with the risk. We have to be prepared for the possibility of being busted. We have to go through all of the clandestine operations of hiding our grows and making sure that nobody knows, and all that risk we're taking. That's why the weed is so damn high. But now, in the age of medical marijuana, why is the price of weed so damn high? Nobody's running from the man. People are able to use marijuana openly. People are, as long as they're keeping it at a small amount, if they're growing as a caregiver, the price of, they're able to deal this back and forth to each other without much interference from the man. So why is the price of weed so damn high? Here in Oregon, we have people that are operating pseudo dispensaries, kind of underground, so no one knows about it. Even there, the price of weed is $150, $200, $250 an ounce. Why is the price of weed so damn high? I corresponded with Mark Emery about this before he got busted and sent to jail, sent to prison here in the United States. And according to his estimates, weed can be grown indoors. High quality marijuana can be grown indoors anywhere from $12.50 to $25 per ounce. So why is the price of weed so damn high? Another reason people talk about the price of weed being so damn high is so many hands in between that take it from its being fully grown all the way to being packaged in large amounts and then broken down into medium amounts and then broken down into small amounts and then broken down into the smallest amounts that are sold out on the streets. And at every point in between, somebody's got their fingers in the pie, taking their part of the cut. But why is the price of weed so damn high when it's one guy just selling to another guy? When it's somebody who grows for himself and just sells directly to his friend? When there's no breakdown, when there's no middleman in between? Why is the price of weed so damn high? Well, because it can be. Because that's what people are charging and that's what the market will bear. Even if it costs that indoor grower $12.50 or $25 per ounce to grow that ounce, if someone's out there willing to spend $300 on it, that's what he's going to charge for it. Why would he want to go out and sell that weed for $200 an ounce if the person he sells it to keeps half of the ounce for themselves and sells the other half at the inflated $300 price? The black market, or the underground market, I should say, is dictating the price of weed, and that's why the price of weed is so damn high. And what I'm worried about in this is that we've reached a point where people have gotten used to the price of weed being so damn high. When we talk about alcohol prohibition, the prices of alcohol went up during prohibition, but prohibition only lasted 13 years. So there were people who were alive who could remember when the price of alcohol wasn't so damn high when it was legal. Now, marijuana's been illegal for so long and the price has been so high for the last couple of decades, there are people who have grown up thinking that's naturally what the price of weed should be. It should naturally be $50 an eighth or $60 an eighth. That's just what weed costs, having no idea how little it actually costs to really produce fine vegetable matter. And of course, if marijuana were legalized, as we were seeing in the estimates leading in the campaign to Prop 19 in California, outdoor grown marijuana in large operations could be as cheap to grow as $1 to $2 per ounce. So why is the price of weed so damn high? I'm worried that people are used to this price, they're used to where it's being set, and this entire economy in California, in Colorado, to some extent in Oregon, Washington, Michigan, is being set now based on an economy built on prohibition pricing. And who is going to want to lower the prices, even when it's possible to lower the prices, if people have been used to paying so much for an ounce of weed? All the estimates we hear about governments talking about taxing marijuana are based on the idea of keeping that price of marijuana around $300 an ounce in order to extract those high taxes. What happens to that tax base when it's legal and you can grow it anywhere and the price of production drops to $1 or $2 or $4 or $5 per ounce, those tax rates plummet. So we are setting ourselves up in a situation where entrepreneurs who are creating businesses don't want to see the price go down, and where governments that are getting used to the tax revenue don't want to see the price go down. Well, who wants to see the price go down? Me and you, the consumers of marijuana. The people who are the consumers want this price to go down. Who is going to speak out for us? It's going to be NORML. We're going to be here speaking out for you. I hear people all the time, they say, well, once marijuana is legalized, what's NORML going to do? NORML is going to be the consumer lobby that is fighting the entrenched interests in government that want to keep that price high for their tax rates. Is going to be fighting the entrenched interests in business that want to keep the prices high for their profit margins. That's what NORML is going to be. We are always and always have been the consumer lobby for marijuana smokers. So if you think the price of weed is too damn high, help us do something about it. Join NORML today at norml.org, NORML.org/join. You can make a donation to our nonprofit organization, and we will continue to hold the businesses and hold the government's feet to the fire and make them realize that the price of a gram or an eighth or an ounce or a pound of quality marijuana should be nowhere near the levels it is set today. We got to bring this price down for the consumers. People can still make a buck, tax money can still be brought in, but the prices need to be brought down to a reasonable amount that allows people to make the safer choice of marijuana over alcohol and other drugs, including prescription drugs. Let's bring the price down and bring the benefits of cannabis to everyone in America. And there you go. I didn't think I'd have much to rant on that one, but woo!
Did pretty good, I thought.
Came right out, didn't it? I know Carrie wants to talk about this in Hour 2, so stick around. Toker Talk Radio, Hour 2. We'll discuss more about the price of weed is too damn high. For Cannabis, Carrie, and Ganja John, I'm Radical Russ, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it out one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.